Welcome to the show today. Thank you for being here. I hope the sound is good. You know, the sound is more important than a video when you're making a video. Keep that in mind if you're starting a YouTube channel. And if you're starting a YouTube channel, see if you want to collaborate with me. See if that's something you want to do. Today, we're going to be talking about BPMs. No, not beats per minute. We're talking about box plus minus, and we are talking about probably something you've heard more people talk about now, VORP, value over replacement player, okay? I'm sure you've heard people talk about it a lot with Nikola Jokic having a crazy VORP rating and that being one of the reasons he should be MVP. People say,
VORP, what is that? VORP? Raptor rating? This is all bullshit.
At the end, I'm going to give you my explanation of why I think these stats exist. All right, I'll just give it to you now. I think people own teams and they don't want to watch basketball games, and they also don't trust their coaches. They don't trust their consultants to really know what they're doing, so they would rather rely on data, or they'd rather rely on numbers. And I'm a data guy. I think data is interesting, but I think with games in particular, game theory, just like it's really hard to predict who's going to win a game, that's why handicapping is such a valuable thing, because you're trying to figure out who's going to win a game. If there was a science to it, if there was a formula, people would make a lot more money and people would make careers out of it. It would be easier. So they try to boil it down to a number. But in reality, if you want to manage a basketball team, I think you just got to watch games. You got to know basketball. You got to have a feel for it. I don't think a machine can tell you who's good at basketball. So let's talk about BPMs first. Box plus minus. What is it? It's how many points you are adding to a game. It's not plus minus. Plus minus is how many points were scored while you were on the court versus how many points were scored by the other team. It's different. It's taking your stats, it's taking an accumulation of all your stats, and then making a prediction on how many points would have been scored had you not been on the court versus when you were on the court. It's a formula. I'm not even going to show it. You can't even really find it. There is a spreadsheet of an example showing the formula, but it is so complicated that you get bored, you leave it alone. So it's a formula that takes into account your contribution on the court. It factors in team efficiency though too. So if your team is really good, it weighs that in. So you might not have as high of a score because your team is really good. So it factors that in, and it also factors in your position. It also says that based on your stats like rebounds and blocks, it knows you're a center, so it can figure out what your position is based on the stats that you have, which I think is so weird. It's so odd to me because apparently being a ball handler, being a three-point shooter is more valuable in the NBA. So it knows what position you are basically, unless you're like a stretch big or you're a modern center or whatever they want to call it. It's gonna know, oh, that guy's a center, he's not providing as much value because the big stats he has are rebounds and blocks, and it doesn't weigh in those as much toward your box plus minus. So here's how it works. Here's a scale of what box plus minus is based on how high your score is, what that player would look like. I don't know why I'm explaining it. Let me just tell you. So a plus 10, that means your scoring, your presence on the court is contributing 10 more points than an average player. I stole this from Basketball Reference. I have to say that. Think LeBron, peak Michael Jordan. That's going to be a plus 10. That's going to be a guy that when he's out there, he's giving the team, they're going to have scored 10 more points if LeBron or Michael Jordan was out on the court. 8, MVP season from Dirk or Shaq. Plus 6, All NBA season. So it's really good. You know, these are 6 more points than an average team. That's a lot of value. 6 points can win you games. Plus 4, an all-star. Plus 2, a good starter. Flat 0 is a decent starter or a solid 6-man. Basically, the average player in the league. A plus 0 is an average player. He's not giving you any points, but he's also not losing you any points. Negative 2 is a bench player, a replacement player. This comes in later. A replacement player is theoretically costing you 2 points. Having a sub in is costing you 2 points a game if they play for a whole entire game. A average sub. So moving on. So that's what BPM is, box plus minus. The thing about box plus minus is it doesn't take into consideration how much time you spend on the court. So if you didn't play a whole lot, your BPM is going to be low, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're not valuable. It just means that you didn't get enough time on the court. So what is VORP? What a stupid name. It sounds dumb, but it's actually kind of cool. It's value over a replacement player. Remember when we were talking about replacement players? They got negative 2. Negative 2 is the baseline VORP, okay? So a box score estimate of the points per 100 possessions. Why 100 possessions? I also should have said BPM is weighed over 100 possessions as well, because 100 possessions is how many possessions most teams get in an NBA game. They should just say in NBA game, not 100 possessions. Why? Because I think it makes it easier, right? It's easier to understand. VORP is a season stat too, so you don't have a VORP per game. You have a VORP over the over the entirety of a season. So if you play in a lot of games, your VORP is going to be higher. And all-time VORP is going to be really big because however many seasons you play, your VORP is accumulating. But we're going to talk about this season's VORP rating. So it's your value over replacement player. So remember that replacement player? He got -2. He cost his team -2 points per game. But that's okay. He's a sub. He's not supposed to even really break even. He's not an average player. He's a little worse. That's why he's on the bench. That's okay. So it's your value going over that replacement player. Let's look at this season's VORP. Who had a really high VORP? We all know Nikola Jokic did because everyone was talking about it. You probably hadn't even heard of what VORP was until somebody talked about Nikola Jokic's VORP rating this year. His was 9.8. So the sub that came in for the Denver Nuggets for Jokic, I forget who it was. I don't even really remember. Oh, it was Boogie Cousins, I think, for most of the season. He scored 9.8 points more than Boogie Cousins, or a theoretical Boogie Cousin. Because theoretically, Boogie cost his team -2 points. Boogie is good, but again, he is a backup. So while Boogie was on the court, he was probably losing the team buckets. That's probably just the way it is. But when Jokic was out there, he was getting 9.8 points more than Boogie would have. This is all very confusing. I'm hoping you're going to understand this. I'm hoping it's going to make sense to you. Hopefully you'll have a little more of a breadth of knowledge. Value over a replacement player. So when he's injured, you know, okay, now that Nikola Jokic is injured, it's going to cost us 9.8 points, which is a lot of points. 9.8 points, most of the time will lose you games. So next up, we got Giannis, 7.4, Embiid, 6.5, 5.9, Luka Doncic, and 5.1 for LeBron James. That's as far as I'm going to go. Next is like Kevin Durant. It's just good players after that. But think about this. Jokic is basically doubling LeBron. So y'all thought the Lakers sucked without LeBron. The Nuggets really sucked without Jokic. All-time VORP. Remember I said it accumulates? All-time VORP. Who has the highest VORP of all time? It's LeBron James with 142. So that number is accumulating over all of his seasons. Next is Michael Jordan with 116. LeBron has played more seasons than Michael Jordan. So don't anyone that's like really emotionally invested in LeBron versus Michael Jordan, don't worry about it. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. But who is third? This was the fun one. This is what I thought was interesting. Stockton. John Stockton with 106. Good for John Stockton. I bet none of you thought that. He's above Malone, who is next, and Kevin Garnett and Chris Paul, Tim Duncan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Dirk Nowitzki, and David Robinson. That's the 10th. That's the 10th one. Why not name the top 10? I hope that made sense. I hope that gives you a little bit of clarity. Honestly, I'm a little bit impressed with myself that I got it all out in one take. And then I think I really articulated it pretty well and it made sense. But thank you for being here. Thanks for coming to the show. That was fun. That was exciting. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. You did enjoy it. You're here. You're at the end. You made it. But if don't subscribe if you don't think you're going to watch any more videos, because I think that fucks it up. Goodbye.